This is the Empower Podcast. Released August 28th, 2022. Episode 601. Rebuilding Projects with Dave Young. Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Dave Young of Young Circuit Designs and BlueStamp Engineering.
Welcome back, my old friend. My first EE friend? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. It was professional, maybe. Maybe first professional.
Longest EE friend for sure. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, okay, longest.
Yeah, for sure.
Longest.
Yeah, like I probably met other people before you, but then I've kept in touch with you the best, 100%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Welcome back. You are a guest of the show in the past. I think, let's see, I got it 305 and 409, which of course we will link into the show notes. First time it was just you and me chatting. I think you said you were in a hotel room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we had you back on for the impedance match, the first consultants impedance matching. And that's actually the one where I've told people this a couple times before, where I asked you and Eric and Peter, who were on the show, about like, well, where do you guys go when you have questions about consulting? And it was just crickets. And I was like, I guess I'm starting a consulting forum. And like, so it's been great.
Yeah, that consulting forum's been amazing.
Yeah.
Especially the thread that's going about the component shortage group.
Oh my God.
I have had no end of horror. It's just so many emotions reading that. Really,
mirthful laughter.
Yeah, a lot of laughter, a lot of fear, a lot of relief.
Yeah, holy crap!
All these stories.
Yeah, bubblegum tap shoes is the phrase we use around here too, as well. That's the code word when we're going to be talking about shortages, which we will be talking about quite a bit on this episode. One of the things that I want to ask Dave about is his experience as a consultant. And we'll get to this, but his experience as a consultant and like just having to deal with it, boots on the ground every day, getting notices, getting clients being like freaking out, it's just there's always something new popping up these days.
Yeah. Like every third day you get an email.
Every third day. Wow.
Yeah. I know when all my clients make boards, all the boards I've designed for the last 10 years as a consultant, I know when they're making boards because there's something that's short. Yep. And so I got to go run and find some other alternate or redesign a LDO footprint.
Let's get into that right now. Yeah, I mean, so someone goes and turns 100-part board, right? It's got 100 parts on it. Let's just make up some numbers here. It's got 10 active components, maybe another 10 not quite as active as like an op amp, but maybe like N-channel FETs and 10 to 15 of those, and then the rest passives, right? So like 80% passives and 20% everything else. How many of those chips are changing on a 100-part board like that?
Oh Lord. For a while there, it was a lot. It was a lot. So almost all the ICs and almost all of the FETs you couldn't get. But some of them you knew that you'd be able to get. Like it was like, they're not gonna really push this out very long. And it would take me longer to redesign it anyways than it would for you to do it.
Yeah, I see.
Or the client just pays the ransom and gets them from the gray market.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's
feel real smarmy doing that, but if it's the choice between shipping your product and not, and you've got to make payroll.
I really hope what I'd like to do. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to do a sting operation where I, right before the shortage ends, I'd like to have like a load of legitimate chips that I sell to someone who's a broker at like a really high price, and they just spend their entire life savings on it, and then they can't unload them. And then the next day, this is like my like ultimate schadenfreude, of like the next day they're stuck with that until the next shortage, which is hopefully a very long time from now.
Yeah.
And it's just like they're destitute. That is,
I think that's the only way it happens. And I think they've all made way more than enough money so that that's not a problem for them. And I actually, just today, I think the tide may be turning because someone emailed me like spammers, like you get spam from PCB houses asking you to quote. Yeah. And I got an email of people saying I have FPGAs at the best price.
Yeah, no,
and this is some random person offshore.
They've been they've been doing that the whole time.
But they just first time I ever got it.
Well,
okay, fine. They might have just found
your email filters are going bad.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's it. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, so you got to go out and chase it then.
Mm-hmm. So what is your temperature on the current? I mean, is it slowing down at all for you or no?
It feels better. It might feel better because I've done all the work of designing all this stuff out. So I'm not
Well, sure.
getting hit every 3rd day like I was
Oh, okay.
from past clients. So I'm definitely getting fewer like, "Oh gosh, we need these parts and we need to turn it and we need to get this done in the next 6 to 12 weeks, otherwise we're out of stock of our units."
Yeah.
So I'm not getting those as often. And the other thing is the ones I do get, it is easier to find parts. I remember at one point I couldn't even get an N channel FET with some
Oh, yeah.
particular specs of any package. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just go on vacation for a few months because
Yeah, right, right. This
if
will
we
this will
can't,
work itself out by the time I get back.
yeah, I can't do anything if we can't get any parts. I can do stuff if we can get some parts, but if we can't get any parts, it's a silly thing to be working on. So yeah, it's getting better. Every time I go looking for parts, it feels like there's more of them to choose from when I'm looking for alternates.
Okay, that's yeah. I mean, that's the best. I mean, I don't expect like a market report from that's all encompassing here, but I feel like it's just like something we can kind of ask people that are in the industry dealing with this stuff on a daily basis. When we have them on, we'll ask about it, and hopefully it's like kind of like a Rotten Tomato score over time.
Right, right. Get the average enough people, you'll get a decent reading.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, what is the scale of the redesign though? Too. That's the other thing. Like, I mean, I've been hearing a lot about like power conversion is kind of like the big one that's biting people.
Yeah, and the thing with power conversion is it's not well, especially for like switch mode power supplies where they're heavily layout dependent. That's where you really get hurt. So to swap an LDO, which I've had to do a bunch, yeah,
Sure.
it's no big deal. You move some stuff
Yeah.
around, you make sure that your decoupling caps are real close, and you're okay.
Hmm.
But you change a switch mode power supply, now your qualification is much bigger, and now you've got to pick new passives. So now the passives aren't going to be as relevant, and then the layout is a big, it's a big thing, and you might be moving from a QFN package or something bigger like a BGA or a WLCSP package. So the really small ones that trigger having to go to blind and buried vias.
Oh,
And
got
so
it. Yeah.
now you've got tons of pain just because of a silly switcher that needs to make 3.3 volts.
Hmm. Yep.
So I have experienced all of those things. And you have to have candid conversations with the client, be like, hey, this is going to take me some time, not just to design, but then we're going to have the prototypes built, and then I'm going to have to qualify them. And then there's a risk that there's going to be something wrong, or there's going to be something that needs adjusted, or something is hopefully great, but something might go wrong. And they're talking about having more parts in 20 weeks. Maybe you just wait it out.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, it's always like a risk analysis like that,
Yeah.
right?
And there's
Yeah.
there's no it's just crystal balls. There's no like being an engineer, you always want to quantify it. You want to say like, well, there's a 75% chance of this and a 25% chance of that. There's none of that. It is all speculation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's usually where they go and they do the smarmy thing and order and pay the people whatever they're asking, or not whatever they're
Mhm.
asking. There's been sometimes they balk and they're like, nope, they're asking 100 times more. I'm not paying $100 for a switcher. So, design it out or do
I
whatever.
I've heard some bad stories around that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of which were on the consulting forum. So
Like I said, that you could easily enter that into the Library of Congress as a great capture of the culture at the moment.
the zeitgeist of pain in the electronics industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very honest and very real representation of what was going on and what it was like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. So apart from the work, it's designing circuits, but the other thing that's really obnoxious about it is here I am redoing work that I've already done.
Yeah, right. It's almost like you're being punished for just choosing parts in the past that
Yeah. And everybody's getting hits. You don't feel bad. It's not like you made a mistake or anything. It's just I'm doing a bunch of work. I'm billing my client, and I'm not really providing any extra value.
yeah. I was talking to someone about this. Maybe you? I don't know.
Yeah, it could have
I
been.
just think about it like I mean, oh, you know what it was? It was like someone was asking me about like just the consulting field generally. And I was like, the part shortage means a lot of stuff sucks right now. But I don't know any consultants that are hurting for work because everybody needs help in this space, right? It's just
Yeah,
like there is a ton of work to try and just deal. The only way out of this is to go to either wait or to do something about it. And so the do something about it crowd is making money, like that's
yeah.
part of the That's part of the thing. You got to go solve problems.
It also happened at one of the hottest job market times that's ever happened. So
Ah,
even if
yeah.
you wanted to hire a full-time engineer, you couldn't
Hmm.
because there's nobody available. Like everybody's got a job and everybody's scrambling to get all their work done. And there's a lot of
Hmm.
work to be done as a whole. And adding the chip shortage just, it just piles on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What's that term? Cascade failure.
Cascade failure. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
like
like
that.
one thing goes wrong, which would have been fine, but then that causes another thing to go wrong, which could have been okay. But then a third thing goes wrong and now you're in real trouble.
Well, outside of that, so it's been, what year was that? So 305 was half of the show ago. Oh my goodness.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
got to tell
Well,
you,
this
that
is
first time I was on the amp hour, I was like, oh, I'm cool now because I've been on the amp hour. I was really
Nah, you weren't.
I definitely was not and still am not. But I was on the amp hour, which is like,
I mean, you actually are cool, aside from like, being a dad and like, all the things that make you uncool.
yeah.
You've always been like a very cool person to me just because like much like other people I think I've described in the show before, like people who just know what they like in life and are just confident about that kind of thing and do it enthusiastically. That's like the people I love hanging out with. So like in that way you are cool,
Yeah.
but you're not like you're not
I'd,
like
I'd, I'd, re-
Instagram cool.
I'd refer to it as a
Sorry.
confident dork, is the way
Yeah.
to like, I think it's
Yeah.
great to drive a minivan. So I'm going to do it with the
Yeah.
best style that I can. And here I
Hell
go.
yeah. Yeah.
Here I go.
Look at that cargo space.
Yeah, nothing makes a minivan look good unless you've
Yeah.
got, a couple bikes and a kayak on the top, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
everybody's like, "Oh, that car is awesome."
Yeah. You were living in Denver then, now in upstate New York.
Yes.
But what about like other work you've done in the meantime? Like work you're allowed to talk about, I suppose, in the past,
So, like consulting work?
yeah, like 6 years.
6 years, yeah. I bounced around a bunch of stuff, but I've kind of boiled down what I do to take a measurement, make a decision, and then do something with that data. So,
Hmm.
I like every project I do, measure something, make a call, do something, whether it's telemetry or light up a thing or
Uh-huh.
whatever you want.
Is the nature of measuring things changing from your perspective?
Yeah, it's getting way easier. Way
They took
easier.
our germs.
I mean, it really is. I designed an ADC in that when we were at Keithley, Chris, it would have been awesome to have that ADC, and it was like it's
Yeah.
available now in small quantities for $20.
Yeah. Right.
It's
Yeah. And yeah,
it's
you amortize the engineering over however many products you sell. And
yeah.
probably not that many if it's a $20 ADC, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
And
okay.
it's still great to have. You got to have the nuance because you can't plug in crappy cables into a really high end ADC. It's not going to give you what you want. So
Sure, sure.
there's still all the nuance and there's still all a lot of engineering. But the things that you can do now
Mm,
are way better with an IC than there were before
yeah.
at the price point that can be afforded for a reasonable product.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where the efficiencies have gone. I feel like in our industry, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it used to be IMUs were $500 and now they're, cents.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
and just the things they enable and all of so basically you pull all that know-how into the silicon design and then maybe the firmware around it. And then it's like, okay. And then schlubs like me can, put it on the internet.
Yeah. So guys like me can look at that design and be like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that is good.
I think we just summarized the electronics industry, Dave.
It's actually a really great gig. Get to build cool stuff, talk to other people that are doing similar things, see all their work.
Yeah.
It's good.
I mean, what about let's put it on a 5-6 year timeline then, even like 5-6 years ago, what about manufacturing tool availability? Like, I mean, let's leave aside the shortages,
Yeah.
but like the availability of tools and stuff like that too.
Yeah. So I switched to Altium
Oh yeah. Yeah. You'd been an Eagle person.
from Eagle. When they went away from the perpetual license, I was like, it's not going to work for me. So, well, I still have an Eagle license and I still use it because I have those legacy designs and I want to make sure I can support them. But yeah, I typically work in Altium now. And there's been a lot of innovation at the top end. And I know you talk all the time about KiCad and all the cool stuff that they've been doing. Everything's better. The big thing for Altium that they're doing, which is really great, is the Altium 3, like the cloud stuff.
Oh, you like the cloud stuff.
I
Interesting. I've
really
heard it
do.
mixed. I've heard mixed both ways. Like,
Yeah.
some people love it,
So
some people don't, you know?
what I like about it is they're really clever. They made it so you could take it or leave it. If you do not want to participate in the cloud, you do not have to participate in the cloud. You can still.
I do not believe that's the case for Eagle anymore or whatever, Autodesk Electronics. I think
Yeah,
it's
I don't
it's
think so. And
you're
and
in. I think
and
that's
I
it.
think a lot of companies really
Yeah.
miss the boat on that when it comes
Yeah.
to, and especially for me as a consultant, because like I said, I have legacy designs that I just can't import and move in. Like if somebody wanted to change the footprint and tell them that I'm gonna have to change CAD packages just to change a footprint because part shortage is happening, they're gonna freak out because it's a huge
Mm.
cost. It's a
Oh,
big
so you mean
lift.
even like the purchasing model of the actual software itself too, because you still own an Eagle license, a perpetual license, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, and actually,
I see.
I pay for the temporary one too
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
because I have a couple clients that like to use it, and that's great. I'm
Yeah.
happy to do it.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, that is truly a cost of doing business, right? So as
Yeah,
much as my miserly, only KiCad only, like I get it, like and this is a point that past guest of the show Jay Carlson makes on Twitter all the time. Like, look, it's the cost of a tool. He says you should use the best tool. I think KiCad is the best tool for me personally, but
yeah.
I totally get what he's saying generally. Like, and I think that's kind of the point you're making here too.
Yeah. The thing that would drive me nuts is if they lock me out. If you can't connect to a server, if you can't open your design because you can't connect to a server
I see.
because the company went bankrupt or because they changed their
Yeah.
business model or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you've got to do a whole import to a different CAD package, like that's not going to work.
Yeah, I
Uh,
do say the opaqueness. Like I get IP, blah blah blah. Like, but like Altium is the IP base, or sorry, the binary nature of the files. Yeah, I'm still not a fan of. Like, there are importers now, even in KiCad and stuff like that. But
yeah, but you can't trust the importer. The importers are worse
yeah,
than the
right.
auto router.
No,
They are
well, I don't
terrible.
know.
They are
Yeah, they're not
terrible.
great.
I did the conversion from a couple boards from Eagle into Altium, and it was awful. And then the other
Mm,
problem is the pane stays with you, right? Because your
yeah,
library is
yeah,
imported, and so if you have like 12 extra layers
yeah,
that you don't
yeah,
need on every
yeah,
component, it is so annoying because that means every
yeah,
board that comes out of that component is now going to have extra
yeah.
layers.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so like either invest in like fix that one thing. Yeah, but even that sucks.
So
Mm.
you might as well just do it over yourself. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, right. I
Uh,
mean, one trend that I've seen generally, and I think this is kind of like the Altium 365 thing, is just like software moving into the hardware realm, right? It's
yeah,
been
yeah, yeah.
slowly creeping into the firmware realm. I was actually just on the Memfault, and Philip Johnston and Alvaro Prieto did a really good webinar today about like tools and tooling and like all the stuff that Philip always talks about. And it's really a lot of it is like software methodologies kind of getting down into firmware. It's awesome, but it's
It is.
also happening in hardware, I think.
And the revision control that they have is really
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
and it's all native to the tool, which is nice.
Hmm.
Yeah, but collaborating with other people is way faster.
So tell me about that. I mean, are you using that with your clients and stuff?
I am. So I have one client that went hard into the cloud space, and so I dabbled with it before, like for the MCAD co-designer, which basically lets you communicate with a mechanical engineer. So you send the design, and
Oh, that's cool.
and they have a setup so that the mechanical engineer can move stuff and push it back to Altium,
Mm.
which is great. So I dabbled with that, and that was fun, and it was good.
See, now I always figure that's not that big a deal.
I didn't think so either, but
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I have not been able to do that, and I've used other systems. I guess Eagle can do that if you're in
I mean,
Fusion.
that's the fusion thing. Like
Yeah, right.
and that's like the big thing they sell. But here's my point about this. Like, someone moving a post in like, or like a plastic support,
Yeah,
and like they always kind of, so like the fusion thing, it always is like, oh well, like if it moves, it dynamically updates. I don't want that to dynamically update. I want it to be like, oh hey Chris, there's a big change coming, you need to export your whole model to an STL, and then I'm going to generate an STL and push it back to you. Like, I want, and we could do that a couple times, and like
you like to do it manually.
I just feel like there needs to be a human in the loop there. But what the big thing to me is like, it's such an important change that
Yeah,
like it shouldn't be a casual thing. Like, I know they talk about like, oh, continuous changes should be fine, whatever. If my mechanical
yeah,
person is moving screw bosses around like that, I'm gonna go over and slap the shit out of them.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that is not something that should be happening. Or if it is, okay, maybe if I'm in like such a high speed environment that like, yes, that's the case, but I'm not. Like,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
you got a
I'm
good
slow.
point about that. And I guess Altium kind of solves that problem because you have to it's like an ECO situation where
Yeah, right,
you
right.
have to manually accept the change, and it's like it's a list where you say like, okay, I want this to come into my board, and you can inspect it at that point, blah blah blah. But I mean, your point's well taken. If you sneeze and you mess up the PCB outline and nobody
Yeah.
realizes it because it's just a few mils here or there.
I don't know. I just feel like it's like I'm operating in 2 dimensions, and yeah, I'm operating on very simple boards. But like, if the outline changes, if my inner outline changes because there's a new screw hole or something like that, there's
Yeah,
new keep out areas. Like,
yeah,
that's a one time change. It really should be a one time change. I just yeah, I don't know. Again, like I'm working on slow projects, so like that
yeah,
is not
yeah, yeah,
really a problem. Maybe
yeah.
you're moving faster.
Well, I this board that I did in particular was it was an optical interface board, so
Okay.
the positioning of all the optical components was critical and constantly like
Hmm.
that was the biggest design
Ah, I
point.
see. So you were like tuning almost on
And it
position.
was by nature it's small. So,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
moving 10 mils this way or 30 mils this way is a discussion.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
okay. So that was good, but then when you go into the cloud and you can have other people working on the designs and every time you save it to the cloud, you type out what you did and what goes on and it's all I don't know.
Ah, okay. So that's the
It's
change
maybe
order stuff you're talking about, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So in general, anything you do, even going between schematic and PCB, you have to do a change order.
And you say change order, I think of them as kind of commits. What you're talking about, though, like, are they incremental changes or are they actual change orders?
So they call it an ECO or engineering change order. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you have a list of things. So like, okay, I've changed some things in the schematic. Here's your list of things that we are about to make happen to the PCB.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you say, okay, those all look good. Go ahead. And then there is the commit that you were mentioning. It was when you're all done with your edits, and then you put it into the cloud, and you can write notes and whatever. And
Got
you
it.
put
Okay.
notes
All
on the
right.
schematic.
That's like a release
Yeah,
notes,
and it's
commits, and stuff like that.
it's not
Yeah. Yeah.
seamless. It's not like working in Google Docs where we could both be working on the same schematic page at the same time, and I can watch
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
move components over here and there. That's not.
I don't think that's necessary either. I think that's yeah.
No, no. It's similar to what you're saying before. Is if somebody's futzing with stuff, I want to I want to know about
Yeah. I
it.
mean, like, yeah. It's like leave me to do my part, and
Yeah,
then I'll tell you when I'm done. I
yeah,
don't
and
know.
that's what
It's
it's good at. Is like, okay, you
yeah.
work on the digital section, I'll work on the analog section,
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
and we'll meet in the middle.
Hmm.
And that's been helpful.
Speaking of ECOs, how have you been managing all of these changes? Because like this is almost like sustaining engineering type work, like stuff we used to do Keithley, maintaining products over time, stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
so, are you standing up? Are you? We had Michael Coron from Duro Labs, and I'll link that one into. But like they have like a change management system, stuff like that. Are you pushing change management systems into these startups that you're working with, or how do they handle changes?
So I used to handle change. I used to try and get them set up with systems, and it's not great to tell other people what kind of annoying systems to use because there's no like change order. There's no management system that anybody's going to be like, I love working this tool.
Mm.
So
You know what I love? Spreadsheets.
spreadsheets, yeah. And so that's what I switched to is I switched to
Oh, you
spreadsheets
did.
because
Okay.
it's lowest common denominator and everybody can
That's right.
understand it.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so even a startup that likes to play around a lot with different ideas or iterate or has user interface issues where it's a lot of iterations, you're still talking about, you're probably making at least beta units by Rev E.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
not a ton of changes. And it's usually
Mhm.
done over a short period of time, somewhere between 6 and 18 months.
So so basically, you are just kind of getting them bootstrapped up enough with like to see the delta between
Yes.
the Rev A, Rev B, Rev C,
Right.
whatever.
And that's how I
Yeah.
track
Okay.
it. Is so I have a change list that as I go, and actually so my change list starts when I release the board. So when I release the
Mm.
board, I generate my change list and I generate the next rev of
Mm.
documentation.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Because sometimes, you go to the fab and you wake up in the middle of the night, be like, I didn't change that one thing.
Yep. Yeah. Totally.
So so then that's what the change list. So the idea is to make entering information into the change list as low effort as possible.
Hmm.
And then checking it out of the change list, it takes some effort. So you have to first
Yeah.
update it and you have to mark it as reviewed. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
some method there to, and it's all captured.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I mean, this is like I think I've talked about this maybe on the forum, maybe just with you, maybe on the show. I don't remember where, but like the concept of like nobody is checking your work. Like I think I've learned
Yeah.
that from you actually. Because you've always been very meticulous about checking your own work, and it's
Yeah,
like
you got to have protocols. You got to have
yeah,
things because
exactly.
it's so easy, especially if you're late on a design or you're rushing or the client's like, "Hey, we're really hurt and we need this to be done quickly." There are always pressures to move faster, and it's one of those you move.
Yeah, you got to slow them down, right? I mean, like that's
Yeah,
like
and you got to say like, "Hey, this is a time where we have to go slow to go fast," and
yeah.
I am about to save you $10,000 and 3 weeks
Yeah,
on your
that's right.
schedule.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not going to tell you about it because it means I made a mistake, but I am going to save you a board rev right now.
Yeah. Right, right,
And
right.
and that's, you know, it's helpful when you get them to calm down, and it's only a day. The review process takes, even on a complicated board, the review process is like 4 to 8 hours.
Yeah. I mean, do you do any? So, well, I guess since the last time you were, I guess you both times you were on the show. I was not yet doing consulting full time. I had just been thinking about it when you were on
Yeah.
or maybe I had just started it. But do you like counsel people that are getting into consulting? Is that something you've done aside from me?
Apart from you
Yeah,
sitting
yeah, yeah.
there sharing
I don't count. I mean,
chatting over drinks with Chris to tell him it's
yeah.
great and great and great and great.
Right. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. It's
It's
gonna be
gonna
fun.
be great. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
I've talked to some people that look at it, and everybody always wants to know how do you get the first few clients, and that's immediately the first question out of their mouth, which is fair because the first few years that I did it, it was a few lean years.
Yeah.
You don't make a ton of money, and they always want to talk about that.
This is the thing that I've tried to impress on people when I've talked to them about it is actually the stuff that you and I talk about outside of, work stuff is we often talk about personal finance type stuff.
Hmm.
And I think the number one thing that I learned from you is just like, you got to have your personal financial house in order. Like that is
Oh yeah,
the most important thing. Cash cushion, cash flow, like just understanding where you are, making sure you're not like taking on a bunch of debt and like, I don't know, like it's just
yeah. You can't do well independently if you're sitting there worrying about how you're going to pay your mortgage or pay your car payment or how you're gonna get through the next
right.
month. Like it's
Right.
just not going to work out. You're going to be preoccupied. It's not going to work out.
Right.
You got to be making moves 6, 12 months in advance if you're going to be out on your own.
Hmm. Okay, so 12 months ahead, you're starting to save. You're saving as much as you can, half your salary, hopefully, type of thing.
Sure.
Then what? What are you doing after that?
Find work.
You didn't know I was going to ask you this stuff. We didn't
I
talk
did
about
not.
this before.
I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
not. But yeah,
yeah,
so the advice is to find a client. And actually, I would even make that a more broad statement because I've worked with a bunch of startups. I would say starting any business, you have to find somebody who wants to pay you money. And
yep. That is correct. Yes,
I
yeah,
don't care how good your patent attorney is, and I don't care how great your website is, and I don't care about any of that stuff. If you have yet to find somebody who wants to pay you money and like really wants to pay you money, not just like sit at the bar and tell you I would totally borrow that. You got to have that. If you don't have that, then you don't even know who you're going to be talking to
yeah,
about what needs to be built or what needs to be done. So like what services are you offering? I don't know. Well, go figure out what people need
yeah,
services done.
yeah. I mean, I always think about so like I think 12. If you are planning 12 months out as well, like talking, if you're not networked to actually go and like start talking to people and like you probably have some people that you could talk to about something relevant to this. So like I always think about the common contacts we had like when we were both working together in Cleveland. Like you want to talk to people that are hubs, right? So that's always the
Yeah,
big
people like
thing. And
Chris Gamble of the
I was
Amp
actually going to
Hour.
say Dave Young of Young Circuit Design. But like, what I really mean is like FAEs. Those are the ones that I think about.
Oh
Like
yeah,
salespeople and that sort of thing.
and I tell you what, they're really awesome people just to start. I've never met an FAE that's not really happy to talk about electronics. Like they
I
by
wonder
their
if I have.
personality or just the natural person to be drawn to that position loves
Hmm.
to talk about cool technology and loves to talk about making cool stuff.
Yeah.
So even worst case scenario is you talk to an FAE, they don't give you any leads, but you get to talk about really awesome things to build or neat
Yeah, but I
projects or
think you
neat
shouldn't
parts.
be asking for leads on the first conversation, anyways, right? It's more like, what's that? There was like a thing about uh, someone who's starting a company is like, anytime I asked an investor for money, they gave me advice. Anytime I asked them for advice, they gave me money. I think that, I
Yeah.
mean, like that same kind of thing too. Like you don't
Yeah.
go and like ask an FA like, oh, do you know anyone looking for a consultant right now? It's like, nah, tell me about the business. Tell me about
No,
the,
I don't think that would
what are
work.
the trends you're seeing? Like that sort of thing is like, you got to get to know someone first and like build that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, really, the question that I would ask the FAs is, what's annoying all your people right now?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good
what
one.
job
Yeah.
needs doing? That's the question I
Yeah.
ask. What job
Yeah.
needs doing? What is
What kind of
taking? What's
what kind of
holding
crap can I
everybody
take
up?
care of for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do people hate? What is the current answer to that in your region?
It is very hard to find technical people. It is
Just
very hard
broadly?
to find technical
Interesting.
people. Yeah. I just spoke to Cornell's accelerator and
Mhm.
I gave him a big talk because they're very early stage at Cornell, their summer accelerator. And so I gave him a talk like, hey, you really have to know that UL and FCC exist, but not now. So I was trying to give him like the 30,000 view of, if you want to be successful, there's all these things that you need to know about and plan for. And this is kind of your path. And all of their questions at the end were, how can we find people?
Mm.
What level of people should we be hiring or engaging? If we can't find people, should we go on places like Fiverr?
Oh my god.
I mean, so everybody
Fiverr
wants,
specifically? I would do Upwork, but not
well,
Fiverr.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the question is, how do you find people? And unfortunately, I don't have a great answer.
Leave Ithaca, New York is probably the first step.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. Ithaca's not a bad place if you're just looking for some help over the
It's
summer
a
because a
no,
lot of
it's a
smart
beautiful
people.
place. It's and there's a lot of smarty pants there, but I'm just saying that like, it's not exactly like buzzing with
No, it is not.
humans.
It is not.
It's not a high density area.
No, no. You're not gonna throw a rock and hit people. You might throw a
No,
rock and
yeah,
hit a
no.
cow. But still, how do you find people? How do you get people to work? How do you set people up? I think that is the biggest pain point. I talked to multiple of my clients have expressed interest in growing their teams and still struggling to find folks.
Huh.
So if any of your listeners are in college or trying to change careers or something,
Mhm.
start building stuff and show that you can actually do stuff, and it is a very compelling case to be making. Like, oh look, I know how to build
Yeah, well, yes.
IoT point and do all the kind of stuff that you are
Mhm.
trying to do.
Well, I think that's definitely one piece of it. We talk about that on the show a lot here, like, build your portfolio, build out the things that you're doing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
then there is that matching of those seeking and those looking, right?
Right.
Those are the same word, sorry. Those those looking for a job and those looking to find people for a job, right? Like that matchup is, I think that's still a tough piece though, right? So that's
Yes.
still networking and I don't know, like,
Yeah, getting out
so
there.
like, okay, so then your clients, where are they looking? Because that's another thing. Like, so people might be wanting to change jobs here
Hmm.
that are listening to the show, but they don't even know where to go. I think feel like the default is always like these job boards that are soul sucking.
Yeah, so the job boards are soul sucking. The job boards are really great though because they tell you who's hiring. And so the most successful thing I've seen people do is go on job boards and then go on LinkedIn. So
Mm,
who's hiring? Who do I know that works there? Or who do I know that knows somebody that works there?
mm.
How can I connect with somebody who's at this place that's hiring? Because you're right, the job boards stink, and who knows what process they have for dealing with all the applications and all this stuff. It's a challenge.
I had someone who I introduced them to a company and they were, like they said, oh, yeah, we'd love to talk to you. Like your credentials sound fine. And then this person that I was introducing them to put in a resume through the place they wanted to do it. I think it was LinkedIn.
Yeah,
And he's like, yeah, they immediately rejected me.
yeah,
And so then he didn't hear back from them. There was like just nothing. It was just black hole, right?
yeah.
And then like 2 weeks later, I was like thinking about it. I was like, they specifically said they wanted to talk to him. Like, what the hell happened here? And it was like, because of a filter system on LinkedIn, he didn't click the right button and he just got immediately rejected
Yeah,
because
right.
that's how these things are just like logic engines and they have no idea.
No, no idea. And it's not like people are that much better. You could be, if you get a stack of 100 resumes and you have an hour to get through them, what are you going to do? You're going to try and figure out a way to get through them. And you're going to
Yeah.
lose good people. And
Yeah.
you're going to put bad people that aren't a great fit in your good fit pile.
I'm less worried about that part. I mean, that's just hiring in general, right? But
Yeah, sure, sure. So I guess it's this problem that we're talking about is not one that has been solved.
yeah,
It
no,
is
it sucks.
still a challenge. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It is still a challenge.
networking is still the answer,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Sorry, folks.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. I do like the so I run BlueStamp Engineering where we teach kids
Yes,
how
we
to
should
build
shift to
stuff.
that.
And so I
Yeah.
have past staff who are spectacular. We're very picky about who we hire. And so we have past staff who come ask like, "Hey, I'm graduating, I'm getting my finishing my master's program or I'm finishing my undergraduate program or I'm leaving school. Can you help me find a job?" And I love to help however I can. And the best thing has been me saying, "Hey, why don't you look on my LinkedIn profile and
Mm,
see if there's anybody you'd like an introduction to?" And
that's
some
nice.
people I have on LinkedIn that I don't really know that well, but some people like if they were ask me if they wanted to work at Goliath, I'd be like, "I know the guy. Let me connect you with him. You can
Mm.
talk to him over
I'd be
Zoom or
like,
whatever."
"Who introduced you? Oh, Dave Young?
I
Yee."
don't know about this
Yeah,
kid.
yeah.
Yikes.
Well, give people a refresher. What is Blue Stamp Engineering?
Yeah, so we do engineering programming for high school students. The idea being that if you give the student the ability to pick their project and a bunch of really cool tools and a very experienced staff, that you'll be able to give the best education experience possible by them just building it.
Hmm.
And there's a bunch of things that we do differently than everybody else. Like we have a 3 or 4 to 1 student to staff ratio, and we need to have that because most of the time our staff haven't built the projects themselves. So
Right. They're not like turn the crank, do the same thing
yeah,
each and every
they
time. Right.
don't have answers. And our favorite conversation to have in training, in a staff training, we talk about this. The best conversation you can have with a kid is they say, "Hey, this isn't working and I don't understand it." And then for a staff member to say, "I don't understand it either. Let me show you how I'd approach this problem."
Yeah.
And so now instead of teaching them how to build that one robot, you're teaching them how to build robots in general, how to face
Hmm.
problems that have no clear path forward. And
Yeah.
that experience is so much more powerful in the motivation that the kids come in because they get to keep their projects and because they define their own goals and they define their own projects. It makes for a really amazing experience for both the students and the staff.
Yeah. I feel like there's another piece in there too, which is like I'm guessing you already have pretty high performing kids coming in that are doing engineering over the summer that are probably
Yeah, yeah,
nerds and or future nerds. So like I'm not too worried about them, but just the kind of like the self-talk piece. Like, I still in my late 30s, I'm still like, I suck at coding, like I can't do this. But like the getting over that, like, just the spending time on it and doing some research on it and maybe reaching out to people for help and like that self-talk piece and like that ability to just, process that problem. That is, man, that is, yeah, I wish I would have learned that a lot younger.
yeah. It's a
Yeah.
really powerful tool to be able to do that,
Yeah.
and the confidence and the independence that is gained. Well, there's no other way, in my opinion. There's no better way to grow confidence and independence other than feeling like you've gone in too deep and then figuring out a way out. Like
Yeah.
that, you get to that point where you feel like I can't do this. I'm not good at firmware.
Yep.
I'm not good at XYZ. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just want to give up.
The only way is through.
The only way is through. And then once you go through it, you look back, you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Well, I know that now.
Yeah, I know it now.
Yeah.
But then the next time you face that feeling, you can
Yeah.
remember back. And so every time you face that feeling, you mind it less. And eventually you don't care at all. Like, you and I have been doing this for years.
I would say that, but I think the fear I think that's the other thing though. The fear is still there, you
Is
know?
it?
Oh yeah, man. Every
Yeah.
time. Every time I open an editor. Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
But
I
I
don't
think
know.
the thing is, and this kind of reminds me of this is a bad example because it's not accurate currently. It kind of reminds me of fitness as well. And my old sports coaches being like, "Look, it still sucks when you have to like sprint across a field, right? But your recovery is faster. Like that's what you get better at. You get better at recovering. You don't
That is a good analogy.
you might get a little bit better at the sprinting part. You might, get a little bit faster, but it's still going to hurt. It's like there is
Yeah.
no getting around like exerting yourself like this still hurts.
Yeah.
But the recovery,
Settle on in with a little bit of pain, but
yeah, exactly.
it'll be okay.
And then some sickos, they love the pain,
Yeah, yeah,
they,
yeah.
they really do. I have
Uh,
examples of, very accomplished engineers here that have been on the show, yourself included. You're all sickos, and I love it.
That's a good
You
ride.
know,
It's a good ride.
it's a good ride, right? I mean, but it's like but I think that is the most successful, like that tenaciousness is that, if you can learn that somehow, just that like, either you're going to get through it or, you somehow you learn to love it, whatever. That is a marker of success in my opinion, in
Yes.
the engineering field specifically.
Yeah. And the more you look for that, the better off you'll be. Like, it's okay. I'm uncomfortable. I'll figure it out. I'll get there.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll
Yep.
get there. And
Totally.
that is what we try and teach.
Yeah. I mean, how long has that program been going on now?
We just finished our 11th year, I think.
Wow. Congrats. That's
11th
killer.
year. Yeah. We've been at it for a while. It's been quite a ride.
So 11 years, and they're in high school. So some of them are in almost 30. Is that right?
Yeah.
You
I
had like a
suppose.
18-year-old, I suppose, right?
Yeah. That
I
is
guess an 18-year-old.
true. I have not really thought of that way,
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah. I mean,
until you
sorry, yeah.
brought it up. Oh man, world.
You old.
So,
That's the yeah. No,
oh
that's not
Lord.
not really the age piece. I just mean like like where they are in their careers. Like they're probably out in the
Yeah.
world, right?
So we have
Yeah.
it's really great because we have some of our past students coming back to do guest talks about what their career was and
Oh,
their career
nice,
path
nice,
and all this
nice.
stuff. It's really awesome. And it's fun to have past students come back as staff. Actually, they make some of the best staff. And that, having that come back full circle is pretty neat to see. I'm just imagining what some of those students from 2011 look like now that they're like 30. And that's making me feel quite old.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of old too. So
I am. I'm more than kind of old.
yeah, it's fine. Whatever. Time marches on.
Time marches on. And it's been a good ride. It's been a good ride.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, like if you were able to do a longitudinal study on that sort of thing, like you'd have to really have a control group that just kind of came and sat there and didn't do anything.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, the sit there group, they did poorly in life. But like I said, they're motivated enough to do a summer camp in engineering. Like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. And the other thing is, since it's self-defined, everybody has this like edge to everybody wants to do really great things and make cool stuff.
Yeah.
They don't want to just like turn the crank that somebody else has done.
So what is you mentioned this, I think, when you were on the show the first time, 6 years ago or whatever, but like, I think I asked this question as well. What is kind of what's the hot topic, I suppose? Like, so a high school kid wants to do something in engineering, wants to do a project for themselves. What is a common denominator of those projects?
Yeah, I'd say there's three things that come up. Robotics is still cool. I think robotics is going to be cool forever. But robotics was cool 11 years ago. It's cool now. Making stuff do stuff. I mean, our robotics projects are different because technology's changed over the last 11 years.
I mean, steppers and the drivers and all the circuits there are just incredibly cheap comparatively.
Yeah, super cheap, but like now you can hook it up to an Android phone and have it do stuff based on voice control. Where 11 years ago,
okay, yeah,
that's not something that was available 11 years ago. So
yeah,
that's always cool. The next thing, which is also always cool, is user interface stuff. So kids like making things light up or show you information. Actually, that's been different. Is we have projects that grab stuff from the internet and pull it in and display, do different things based on what's going on in the world. So that's kind of cool.
It's like IoT style. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
so yeah, you use some of the APIs
like
and you get data that way, and you make things happen. So non-traditional, non-screen based information from the internet.
That's great. Yeah.
So, but that would be as a bigger thing of user interface. So they like stuff that lights up. They like stuff that makes noise. They like stuff that you can see and feel and hear. So that's usually
the environment sort of thing.
Yeah. And then the third thing that's new is everybody loves machine learning and AI.
Got it.
And we have some pretty compelling projects for that.
And they already know that coming in though, or like
a lot of them
I can
do.
imagine like if you're flipping through a catalog of like potential projects, that would be one thing.
Yeah,
like,
a lot of them are plugged into it and they know.
Huh.
And then some of them aren't. Like some of them be like, oh, look, a project that can detect when I'm smiling, or a project that can detect when we have one project that'll detect when a parking spot opens up in front of your house just by setting a camera out in front of it. So
it depends where you live. That's
right.
more important in certain parts of the country than others. Yeah.
Most of our students come from the Bay Area in New York City, so that's
yeah, I see.
That's a thing.
That's critical. Yeah.
That has gotten a lot of attention. And actually, one of the lessons we have to teach the students is like, hey, I know this is so cool, You don't want to
Don't be
spend your
creepy.
summer at BlueStamp cleaning data.
Oh, like that. I see. Ooh, interesting.
Yeah,
Because
because
you're training
everybody
models and stuff?
assumes that you can just like plug in data and it'll figure itself out. And it's like, well, no, it can do that if it has a data set from which to work. But if you want to do something totally custom, which we love to see at BlueStamp, you're going to have to provide it the data set.
Right. No downloadable data set just outside the window of your
Yeah.
house. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have all these cool ideas, and it's like, yeah, that is an awesome idea to automatically detect things. And we would love for you to do that. But it's not so great when you have to spend hours and hours and hours telling the model what is and what is not what you're looking for.
What about other things that may have changed over, like, so are more kids popping up with like Python experience, or I mean, RP2040 is now like this new, supercomputer basically that's $4.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
are they coming in with that knowledge already? Because like I said, I assume these are kind of like high achieving, high interested level students.
Yeah, a lot of them are. Not
Yeah,
everybody.
okay.
Some people come in with no experience and they just want to try it,
Oh,
which is awesome. And that's a
that's
benefit
great too.
that we
Yeah.
have is like if you're doing your own individual project, you can put a kid right who's done nothing right next to a kid who's done 10 projects and it works great.
I can imagine like an amazing outcome would be they don't stop at the summer project. They're like, I like, again, like I like this feeling. I like the achievement or
Yeah.
the, kind of the getting through things and like that. Basically building that muscle and like working it out, right? Like that
Yes.
is the most important thing.
We love to see it when students keep going and going and going and going. And actually, we try and get it because that's a huge dopamine hit when you make something totally new out of a project that already exists. And so we ask the students to do that. Like that's the goal is for the students to build their base project, but then design something on it that's totally new and never been seen before, so that they can add something. And it can be something simple, like if you have an obstacle avoiding robot, adding an extra sensor, or adding a macro so that it does something unique when it detects a specific type of obstacle, or even adding a speaker. There's 100 things you can do on any project, but once the
Sure.
student
Yeah.
makes it up and then implements it, it is so exciting. Like they love it,
Yeah.
we love it. Everybody gets really excited, and then once you show them that once, it's very likely that they're going to continue doing some other project as they move forward.
I've been really interested to like, I think this is kind of on Hackster, but they've done a very good job of like convincing all these chip companies to like just keep running contests over and over again. And like, and so like a high school student, like, and you see the kids that are winning, not always kids, but like they're people of all ages and backgrounds, whatever, are submitting projects to these things, but often they are very young as well. And like, you could probably build out a lab or build out, like win some, cash or prizes and stuff like that. If you were just like into that, just designing projects for these Hackster contests and be like, oh, Nordic's doing a project or a contest, no problem.
Yeah,
Intel's
man.
doing a contest, no problem. Like, like just sweepstakes of electronics builders.
Yeah, and what a great way to contribute too, right? Because you're feeding everybody who wants to get after that kind of stuff. Is you're giving them that spark, you're giving them that little bit of motivation to get up and try something.
Like on the chip company sides
Yeah,
or
yeah. So
yeah.
for Hackster to keep running all these events or all these contests or whatever they're doing.
Well, Hackster's doing because they get paid for the contest. So
Oh, they do.
like, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. These are
That's
marketing
a good
activities.
business model.
It's a not. It's good. I mean, it does well. Yeah. I mean, like, and it's not cheap, but it is. I think it's a multi-tiered like benefit to like the people
Yeah,
doing the contest win, the people that are promoting a new product or whatever, they win. Hackster wins because they're selling more stuff, and yeah,
yeah.
no, it's great.
Does Hackster sell stuff? I don't even know what they sell. I thought they.
Hackster is part of Avnet now, so
No kidding. I had no
yeah.
idea.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Are there only like 3 companies left?
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
It feels like there. I was sitting down. I think I talked to you about it. I was sitting down designing an instrumentation amp, and I was like, "There's really only 2 or 3 companies I'm going to be buying this part from."
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And
I mean, now
it's
that linear's gone, Maxim's gone,
yeah,
so it's basically analog and TI.
Analog and TI. That's where I spend most of my. And there's a couple other smaller companies that do have some. I think it was like
Yeah.
was it Intersil? No, they got bought too, didn't they? I don't know. But there are very few
Yeah.
places you can buy instrumentation amps, and that's pretty
Well, I mean
obnoxious.
but that kind of rolls back to what we talked about before too. Like so many of these chip companies are also like rolling the instrumentation amp into like, oh, it's an in amp plus an ADC plus a micro, and the whole thing is now like a application specific like measurement doohickey, in a
Yeah.
single chip,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So
funny you mentioned that ADC I was talking about at the beginning of the
yeah,
show.
yeah.
That was an instrumentation app integrated with a voltage reference with an ADC.
Was it the ADUCM 360?
No, it was a different
Man,
one.
that thing's okay.
It was a different one. But the fact remains is I love that. I mean, that's a great thing to do,
Yeah,
especially because it helps you really bring down the cost. But
sure.
I just I don't think any market is helpful when it's an oligarchy. It's like this isn't
Yeah, yeah, right. That part sucks. Yeah,
like a
I mean, but it's
duopoly
like,
is not going to be great when
well,
we want.
especially when these two companies are making chips at the same place, and it's potentially in a country that might be taken over by China. Like
Yeah, we
to
got some
to be
systemic
blunt
risk
about
here.
it, like yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I started talking, in 2008 when they had everything melted down with the financial crisis. I realized that too big to fail is too big to exist. That's
Mm,
how I've sat there. It's like if we can't
mhm.
stomach this company failing, then they got to go, or at least split up,
Yeah,
or at least do something
no,
else.
split up. Yeah, split up's fine, right?
Yeah, but
I
the
just
the
I can't.
situation can't be where we need you more than you need us.
I'm just still salty that Linear got bought. Like that's like
Yeah, me
that
too.
should not have. No, come
That
on.
man, when you talk about companies with soul, that company had soul.
Hmm. It sucks.
Those guys. I mean, like I said, I enjoy talking
Like
about all of these,
Maxim,
but
pound sand. I don't care. Maxim, good riddance.
you're just
I
mad
didn't. I
because they
didn't.
never picked up the phone for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. They never
yeah,
picked up the phone for me. It's okay.
yeah. The last thing we were going to talk about is investing in oneself, which sounds like we're chapter 11 of the self-help Dave and Chris book. But what we're really talking about is like because of integration levels of these things, right? Like say that part you were just describing has a micro in it, like basically now you as the hardware designer, you like even if you don't have the micro in it, it's just talking to a micro, like hardware engineers need to know more of that stack now, right? Like it's you can't get away with like just being a hardware person if that
Yeah.
was ever a thing,
Well, and why would you want to? There's so many more opportunities to
I
be
yeah.
more involved with the design, right? Like the reason I only do what I do is because there's only so many hours in the day. I would love to get
Hmm.
involved with all the different things and to be able to launch a product all by it'd be so cool if I can make an iPhone 11 or whatever they're up to by
Yeah,
myself.
they're on
That'd be
like 13 now.
yeah. But that'd be so awesome if I could do that. It's just you can't. But you're right that the tool sets allow you to move and do bigger, broader things because they've abstracted so much of it out. And
Right.
yeah, it is a challenge to figure out, okay, so I've got some time that I have available that I said I wanted to learn XYZ. What should XYZ be? That's where I always get, there's definitely a FOMO situation happening where there's so much cool stuff happening. There's so much cool stuff I can do, and there's so many cool products or projects that I could build or technology I could explore. Oh, how do you pick? It's
Well,
so
how do you pick?
fun.
What are you learning these days? I guess is the big thing. Like because like you said, your phone's been ringing every 3 days with a new board to be designed.
Yeah,
So
I've been
like,
learning tons about supply chain, which was
it
not
sucks.
not what I was after, but I guess it's got a purpose. I've really enjoyed getting more into digital hardware, and then I've wanted to grow that into doing more firmware.
Mm,
And I can do all of these things, but I would not call myself a bread and butter firmware engineer. I spend most of my time designing hardware, and then usually somebody else does a firmware if it's a really big project, or if it's a small project, I just do it because it's more efficient for me to do it as opposed to bringing somebody else in. I think it'd be interesting to see if with the gains that you were mentioning in tool sets, if I could take on more of a firmware role and have a more full offering in terms of like product development.
yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I think I've mentioned on the show too is just like kind of the choppy nature. So like assuming, the hardware scene isn't like it is now, but like if everything is smooth and if and parts are available and all that other stuff, like you have design takes, even if you're building a board from scratch, right? You say it takes a month or whatever. It's like, okay, now I do the full design, I send it out, I'm not paying super crazy shipping times and
Yeah.
build times and all that other stuff. There's some amount of time in there, and unless I'm really good at lining up all the work so that the next project starts right as I ship off the files for the first project, like there's nothing carrying that gap, and that's like that. I feel like firmware kind of smooths out Not that this is a reason to learn firmware, but I'm just saying that there is less of a choppy nature to firmware projects because there's always another thing that needs to be done with
Yeah.
firmware. There's always
Yeah.
improvements you can do. Same with software, right? It's just like there's always it's not as choppy in that way, you know.
Yeah, you're
So
100% right. There could be no waiting in the entire firmware project unless it's waiting on hardware.
yeah, those guys.
What do you mean we didn't buy the fast turn time? I'm ready to go
Yeah,
now.
that's right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, I think it'd be cool to see what kind of scope of project could be done by a single person being fully utilized. So one
mm,
person, how big of a firmware and hardware task could one person take on and still be as efficient as a two-person team? Because that's what it comes down to, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Adding a person adds an efficiency, but it also allows you to go faster and do more things that are more specialized. But there's that point. I think it's moving to bigger and bigger projects, and I'd like to do more of
Hmm.
those bigger projects.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the frameworks are kind of being built up a lot as well, where schlubs like me can go and use something like Zephyr and design in a network interface where I'd be like,
Yeah,
sometimes I think about that. I'm like,
exactly.
like if I had to start from just the chip, right? No
Yeah.
supporting firmware at all. Like,
Oh Lord.
I don't even know. Like,
Would
I
you
think
get
that's
there? I don't know if you gave it enough time if you'd ever get there. Because I feel like
I
that's
don't
one of those
know.
things you'd
That's
have to
like,
go back to school for. You'd have to go back to you'd have to get some training because you can't
I
just sit down and
mean,
figure it out with YouTube videos.
I assume like okay, so say like it was the best documented silicon ever, right? It
Yeah,
was
okay.
perfectly documented, but for some reason they decided, you know what, we're going to document it, and then it's on you.
Yeah.
I think maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like,
It'd be a long time because you would get
it
stuck.
would
At
be a
some point, you
really
get
long
stuck.
time. Yeah.
You get stuck, and then how do you get unstuck? That'd be.
I mean, this is always the amazing thing to me when people are designing things in FPGAs and they're like, yeah, well, I designed my own custom logic. And it's like, well, nobody wrote the data sheet for that custom logic. Like, you wrote the logic and then you're building on top of that. And it's just like, yeah, I'm always very impressed in that sort of scenario.
Yeah, me too. Me too. But I love this whole
But it's
thing that.
hard, but it's hard to charge hours for that sort of thing as a consultant, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a part of consulting where you have to spend some time banging your head against a wall for your own good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what anything on your to do list, your to learn list?
No, the to do list is to find some time to make a to do list.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
been, it's been a very challenging few years in terms of being able to get everything done that should be done.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, because you also I remember one thing that I remember with you specifically as well. I remember asking you about like not how you got your first client, but how you got your next client, right? So like I knew
mm,
how your early clients came in, but like I remember asking you when I was starting consulting, like, well, how do you find that next job? Like once you're done with the job, and I remember you saying like, well, they just kind of they come back, and I mean, who comes back? Oh, well, the same clients come back because you've maintained the relationships and you have products that are in the field and they need changes, revisions, enhancements, whatever, and like that relationship management is really important as well.
yeah, and their colleagues will come back and also call. So you're like, oh, Dave did our design. Why don't you call him? He was good.
Yeah. Are you sure they're not just looking at your website and just
Have
they're just
you seen my
really
website?
impressed in your website?
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy. I had a
You get away
client
with a
laugh.
lot, folks.
I
You can
was
get away
laughing
with a
with the
lot.
client about my website, and I was like, yeah, I gotta get around to changing that. That's one of those things I want to do once I have some time. And he was like, nope, it's exactly perfect. It tells exactly who you are and what you're
Yeah,
doing. It's like
it
if
it does show you're not spending all your time learning
nope,
JavaScript
nope. You want a
frameworks
guy
and
who wants to design electronics and not make web pages? This is him. This is him.
I'm pretty sure there's
Oh.
actually the exact same design, more clients and stuff on here.
Yeah,
The same
I've
design
actually
as
got to
6 years
update
ago.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's not even my first website. Do you remember my original website? Oh my
I
goodness.
don't. I don't.
Oh, I'm so glad. I think you laughed at it then,
Yeah, I totally
and that
did.
was before you knew about, all the stuff you know now. And it's
Yeah.
just, oh man. I'm glad people don't grade me on that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that's like actually an important thing because I think that's the other thing when people come to me and they ask like, well, what should I do first? Like, should I go build a website? I'm like, it doesn't
No,
it
I think
doesn't really
I think
matter.
you
I
got to
think
have
if
a
you have nothing
website.
else,
You got to
But if you
have
have nothing
one,
else,
even if it's
that's
Squarespace, because it takes,
yeah,
you stay home on a Saturday night and you make it.
yeah.
But you want to have a domain and you want to have it
Yeah,
at
if you
least
don't
an
have
email.
anything else, you need an email for sure. I think it's all about like the first thing that I'm going to do if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I'd like to do some work for you." I'm going to go look them up, right? And it's like it's not just what shows up on the web, right? But hopefully when I, Google Bob Smith, if for some reason Bob Smith Electronics, I get to Bob Smith LLC or whatever his company's called, and I can like at least see that there's something there, and it's not like the only Bob Smith that I find in the Durham area is like a bricklayer, and it's like his photo, and I'm like, okay, well, when did he switch to electronics? Like that's
Yeah.
so you need to at least prove and get over that hump, right? And so like yeah, you need at least that much, and your site does that, Dave.
It does that. I like to say my site's really great. And if somebody wants to make an introduction, they can send my LinkedIn page and my website. And that is
Yeah,
sufficient to get me a phone call.
that's right.
And
And the
that,
phone call is where it matters.
yeah,
That is what,
that's great. If we
yeah.
get there, then I can help. And then we can decide if I'm a good fit or not or whatever. That's fine. But
Sometimes I haven't been, I've been doing other work lately, but like I was surprised how willing some people were to work with me. That sounds bad.
that sounds awful. What do you mean? You're great to work with. Tons of fun. I
I
worked
just
with
mean
you
that
in two
like
jobs.
there's no proof point. You know what I mean? Like there might be a lot of stuff out. There's a lot of me talking on the internet. There's a lot of me talking to
Oh, right.
camera
You
or
could be
talking
all
on the
razzle
show.
dazzle and no substance.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's no
Because I got to tell you, when I think Chris Gamble, I think razzle dazzle.
yeah, jazz hands. But I just mean like I was really surprised at like how trusting some people are generally. Like there's like, oh yeah, well, I'll know pretty quickly whether or not you are really legit or not. And it like
Yeah.
that does make sense, but I am still surprised that that's a thing. So then you think about okay, so now you don't have to like necessarily build the confidence, but it doesn't matter what you have on the web. I'm not trying to like poke fun at your website or anything like that. I'm just saying it's
Although you
it's all
could.
about that. It's all about the introduction and like the confidence in the person that recommended you.
Yeah, I'd say so. And you want to show a
Yeah.
track record. Like as soon as you can,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you can get that phone call, if you can talk about
Yes.
projects you've done that are similar, you're usually good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like if you can show track record on doing things that have been similar to that, then
That's
it's
true.
that's really what people want to hear. And so for me, if I were subcontracting out or if I were helping a client, I help clients find other employees and help clients find other staff. If I'm looking at them, the best thing you can show is like, oh, I've done this before. Because
Yeah.
then a lot of the pain has already been taken off the table for your next person.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. And I think even if it's like a looks like, sounds like kind of thing, it's like, oh, well, I haven't done, free RTOS on a Silicon Labs part, but I've done it on an NXP part. Okay. Well, that's
Yeah. Saying
maybe not
that
going to be
sentence
like drop
is,
in.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is like, it's all these like contextual clues too of like, oh, they know what they're talking about. And it's not 100% like that, but it just is interesting. Like the things that actually get people over the hump to like say yes and to like, to sign that contract and pay
Right.
your first invoice and like all of these things. Like it's been surprising to me as like an overall experience.
Yeah. Well, look at it from the other perspective, though, is they've
Yeah.
got anybody can be a charlatan, whether they're a consultant or an employee or anybody. And
Yeah.
so if you're going to get help, you got to open yourself up to that possibility. And it's like, well, I
Mm,
don't think they're a charlatan, but we got to make a decision here. So
yeah.
let's go.
One thing I have counseled younger consultants on as well, because they're always like, oh, I'm afraid to bill for this sort of thing or like bill this hourly rate. I'm not sure I'm worth it or whatever. I always like go back to the same story of like I had a lawsuit against the city I used to live in, and I had to hire a lawyer. And I remember like he charged me $350 an hour, and I like looked at that and I'm just like, oh my god. And then after I raged about it for a little while, and it was a small engagement. It was like 10 hours, whatever it was. I got through it. It's fine. My only thought was like, if not him, then who? Right? It's like,
Right.
okay, so maybe I go find someone cheaper, and that may exist, but they're cheaper probably for a reason. Maybe not. Maybe there's an inefficiency in the market, whatever. But if not him, then who? And that is basically my entire confidence around my billing people for my electronics work. If not me, then who? You want to go find someone else who's cheaper? Okay, that's up for you, right? But like, if you've come to me, you've probably come to me for a reason. My billing rate is what it is for a reason, and if not me, then who?
Yeah, and if they find somebody who's better value, great. Like
Yeah,
I would not suggest anybody hire me over anybody else if there's a better person out there. Because
yeah,
that's not how you're gonna, that's not how you're gonna do good work. You're gonna do good work by helping people find the best solution possible for whatever they got to do.
yep, yep. So I think the summary of this episode is: don't hire Dave and Chris. I think that's what we've been saying for the past hour, pretty much.
Oh goodness! Unless you want web work, and then I'm your guy. I'm your guy.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
What else should we talk about, Dave? I mean, I know we're at like an hour, 5 minutes, so.
There was one other thing. Oh, we were going to talk about remote and in-person education.
Yeah.
Totally forgot about that with BlueStamp. So we had this really interesting situation where we had to go remote for COVID.
But why?
Yeah. But why? So everybody goes home, and we had a particularly challenging time pivoting because we're like the antithesis of a MOOC or a course that a lot of people can take. You can't.
Right.
It's really hard to do this individual stuff.
Hardware is in the title,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and with a 4-to-1 student to staff ratio, it's like, how are you going to do this remotely? But we figured it out. We got there, and at the end of the day, we put together something much better than we thought. Like, we thought it was going to be a stopgap for a year, and it turns out it was a really great program, and people had a great time and learned a ton. So that was encouraging.
So what made it successful?
Well, so that stuff I was talking about before,
in an era of difficult, remote education is very difficult, right?
It is. It's super difficult, and that was the other big lesson we learned is it can be as good for some things, but it's never going to be the same as in person.
Okay.
And so you just have to change what your expectations are, and you have to change what you're trying to do and how you're doing it, and that won't be the same. And that's just, you just got to accept that. And so once you accept that, then we realize what our core was is, okay, so we like to teach students how to be confident and grow independence. And when they're sitting all by themselves, that is a great opportunity to teach confidence and independence. Like, you can do this all by yourself. I can't fix this for you.
Yeah, literally, I can't. Yeah,
I cannot do this for you. You have to do this.
Did you implement any specific rules though? Because I think the number one that I would be is no breadboards, no jumper wires, because
we did jumper wires. We did breadboards.
You did? Wow.
We did, and we still do. Yeah. Well, we did limit. So that's one of the things you can't do in person or in remote is you can't have more than 20 jumper wires. So if the project takes more than 20, it's not.
Yeah, they're like, I'm doing a Ben Eater type of project where they're building a computer or something.
Yeah,
the chip. It's like, no, that's not right. That's not.
I got to tell you, that's not a great in-person project either.
Well, yeah,
because one of those wires is going to be wrong, and it's going to tear you.
I see those things. I am so impressed by people that do those, and and Ben's course too. Obviously, Ben's been on the show, and we love him here. But damn.
Yeah. So it was a wild ride, and still is. And it was so good that we thought we'd keep it going. And it's a very compelling program, especially for students that don't have access to education like this in person, because it is hard to find engineering programs like this that give that much latitude and that much freedom and that much attention with that much technical horsepower behind the staff. And so doing it remotely really, really worked out. But it is a great stopgap, and it is a great tool. But I think the in-person one is, you just get to do different projects. You get to do different stuff.
Yeah, it's too bad it can't be 6 weeks of remote, and then it's 1 week intensive in person, final troubleshooting, final presentation type stuff. There's some there's some college programs that are like that, you all get in person, and then you also get the feel good chemicals of just being around other people and seeing things work. That's also there.
Yeah, there's 1,000 ways it could work as a hybrid or as a split or something else. We talked at length about all the different options. But in the end, really what you want is that oh my God, I've gotten in too deep. What am I going to do? I'm scared.
So
I'm
putting them in tough engineering scenarios.
That's how you grow resilience, and that's how you go resilient. That's how you get experience.
The support piece is also really important. That's
we're there to catch. So when you're ready to punch a wall, be like, well, let's not punch walls about it. Let's let's go for a walk. Let's back up, and then let's talk. Let's have a conversation about what's holding you back or what's been killing you.
Yeah, man, that's really tough. It's very impressive that you got through that. Are you still offering? So this obviously summer's over. Sorry, folks, summer's over. I don't know if you
Summer's
know this,
over.
but
Summer's
it's
over.
the end of August. Summer is over. School is starting.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep doing this throughout the school year then, or no?
Not through the so we decided this year we're going to offer private tutoring.
Oh, interesting.
So the remote program worked well, and then we had some students ask us how they could continue.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to do a program like BlueStamp without the amount of time that you would have in the summer.
Hmm.
Especially getting a large group of people that would all have the time during the school year because schedules are
I see.
so jam-packed.
Yeah.
But this year
Right.
we're piloting. We're doing a small pilot with like selective number of people who can apply, a small pilot on private remote instruction. And
Huh.
so it would look a lot like an independent study in a college course.
Hmm.
So you set a goal and you meet for how many hours a week you want. And then you would be expected to do some of it with the staff member and some of it independently.
That's cool. That's great. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. We're pretty excited for it. And I think it's for the right student, it's going to give them a huge opportunity. Like the
yeah.
amount of stuff they can learn, the amount of projects they can get through is going to be big. And that's very helpful for them moving on to whatever their next thing in their life is going to be. That's great. It's a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we would never be able to. It would be very challenged to scale that to 100 or 200 or 300 students.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Because then, by definition, that is 1-to-1
Right.
versus 4-to-1
Yeah, or
type
maybe
stuff.
2 to 1 or something. If there's a couple
Yeah.
friends that want to get together and work on a project and collaborate, there's a lot of options that we're kicking around. We're really trying to figure out what
Mm-hmm.
works. But the remote program gave us enough confidence to say like, okay, this is a meaningful impact, and this is a really great thing to be offering, and we should be figuring out how we can better reach students.
Yeah, that's a good point about the summer carve out too, though, because obviously contextual electronics is a program that does some remote education as well, and like I'd say like the common people that are coming to the program are often like former hardware enthusiasts now doing software, kind of getting back into hardware.
Yeah,
And it's just like the schedule is the hardest thing. Like many of them have families and just like night, day jobs and whatever. And it's just like, okay, so when are you going to carve time out here? Like that is,
yeah,
I can't make you do the work, and at least in the summer, you have this kind of like chunk of time where it's like, this is the thing you're doing versus like nights and weekends. Nights and
yeah.
weekends is really tough,
This is your day job. You're going to come in. You're going to make something awesome. It's going to take a bunch of time,
Yeah.
and we're going to do
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that it's really helpful. If you don't have the time, you don't have much. Because in the summer, the Blue Stamp program is equivalent to a 2-semester class in high school.
Really? Wow.
In the summer, yeah, hour for hour.
Oh, I
It's like
see. I see.
140 involvement hours,
Yep.
which is about what it would be if you took a class like a 2-semester math class all year,
Wow.
September through June or whatever it is.
Wow. Wow. But more doing though too. I guess if you include like homework and stuff though too, right?
So right.
Yeah. Homework's bogus though. Do stuff. Build projects. It's
Build
great.
projects. Build
Yeah.
projects. So much fun.
Yeah.
So
That's really
frustrating.
great, man. Yeah. All that frustration just to learn new things. Well, I hope you find some time yourself. I guess that kind of also rolls back to what we were talking about. I hope you find some time for your own independent study.
Yeah,
And
I know.
whatever
I
you want to learn
know.
next.
Yeah, you too. Maybe I'll be ringing you to say, Chris, I want some firmware advice. How do I get the Zephyr thing off the ground?
Yeah. Well, let's do it.
Yeah,
Man. I know one thing now. I can teach you one thing.
Hey, one more than me. One more than me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you only have to stay one step ahead of your students. So.
That's right.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and it's good hearing from you again.
No, it's my pleasure. Always a good time. I mean, how many cool
Yeah.
points do I get for being on Amp Hour again?
A lot.
A
Yeah,
lot.
A lot.
Not as many as the first time, but a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's a diminishing return. Where can people find more information about you, your business, and your program?
Yeah. So the delightful website we were discussing is youngcircuitdesigns.com. Highly recommend you go check that out.
Oh yeah.
Very recent blog post, maybe as few as 3 years old. And then BlueStampEngineering.com is the education program. Actually, I forgot to mention, we've gotten people to apply for the job of instructor from the Amp Hour recordings in the
All
past.
right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, I mean, Amp Hour people are exactly the type of people we would love to have apply. They are, in general, pretty great for what we're trying to do.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a defunct Twitter account, Dave Young EE,
Oh
And
yeah, that thing's dead.
it's dead. It's gone. It's gone. But sometimes I go on there and look at what other people like you guys talk about. It's fun.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how to get a hold of me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. We'll talk to you in a couple years, I'm sure.
Oh, I can't
I'll
wait.
talk to you. I'll talk to you soon, of course.
Think of the cool points I'll get for the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
You bet. Talk soon.